What's up YouTube, Saf here on Super Saf TV, and welcome to another Super Saf style camera comparison, this time between the iPhone 8 Plus and the Google Pixel 2 XL. This has been the most requested video on the channel recently, and as always we'll be testing out lots of different scenarios. We'll be using the front-facing camera, rear-facing camera, looking at dynamic range, we'll be looking at video as well as images, and audio too. Do look out for the audio icon in the corner of the screen, and that will indicate to you which device the audio is coming from as well. So we're currently outdoors in very good lighting, so it's a good way to test out the dynamic range and see which one is doing it better. And we're going to take a bit of a walk with the front-facing cameras to see how well these do in terms of the stabilization. Let's change that into a run. Now we're testing out the video from the rear-facing cameras, both filming at 4K, and what we can do on the iPhone is use the telephoto zoom, so that will give us 2 times optical zoom, but then we do not have stabilization when we are at this level of zoom, so you can probably notice that it's a little bit shaky. Back to the standard camera, and now let's have a bit of a walk, see how both of these manage stabilization at 4K. And now I'm going to do a bit of a run and see how these do. Now we've just moved to a different location so we can see more of the dynamic range. And we'll also walk, see what the stabilization is like. We're now indoors in good room lighting with the iPhone 8 Plus, just testing out the autofocus. Seems to be doing pretty well. Same lighting with the Pixel, super fast. So that was the video. Now before we move on to images, looking at what we're working with here. For the front-facing cameras, the iPhone 8 Plus has 7 megapixels, the Pixel 2 XL has 8 megapixels, but the iPhone 8 Plus has a slightly wider aperture. And for the rear-facing cameras, things are quite different here. The Pixel 2 XL has a single 12.2 megapixel camera with an f1.8 aperture with optical as well as electronic image stabilization. And the 8 Plus has a dual 12 megapixel camera setup. The primary has an f1.8 aperture with optical image stabilization, but then we've also got a secondary telephoto camera which is going to give 2 times optical zoom, and that has an f2.8 aperture and no optical image stabilization. Also, all images have been taken on automatic. I haven't tweaked any of the settings, and this is to keep things as fair as possible. So initially kicking off with some selfies, I think it's clear here that we have so much better dynamic range on the Pixel 2 XL. This continues on from the success of dynamic range that we had on previous year's Pixels. Now with the iPhone, I have found it to be quite inconsistent when it comes to dynamic range. It's kind of hit and miss, and in this situation you can tell that it's completely missed and you can't see anything in the background. It's completely blown out. But on the Pixel you can see that space station quite clearly. The Pixel 2 XL is also a little bit wider compared to the 8 Plus, and this is going to be good for group selfies and things like that, so that's going to come down to your personal preference. Now testing another shot completely outdoors, once again that dynamic range really shining through for the Pixel. It really is magic how it maintains those details in the background in the clouds as well as in the foreground. Now one new feature that the Pixel 2 XL has is the portrait mode from the front-facing camera as well. This is something that's going to be on the iPhone 10, but it's not on the iPhone 8 Plus. And when we do apply it, then boom, look at that shot. That looks absolutely awesome. It's nicely blurred out that background and it looks like a really crisp shot. Now, it's not absolutely perfect. There are some defects around I can see, but this will only improve with time and machine learning. Now, trying out a low light selfie outdoors in street lighting, you can see that the Pixel 2 XL is doing much better here. It's a much brighter image overall and the colors are also better maintained. And then when we go on to using the front facing flash, I still like the colors better on the Pixel and it's also brighter, but it's not as sharp as the iPhone 8 Plus. It looks like it is using quite a slow shutter speed on the Pixel, which is resulting in a slightly blurry image. This one will come down to your personal preference, I think. Now, moving on to an outdoor macro image, both doing really great here. The colors look a little bit more punchy on the Pixel. And if we go in 100%, you can see that it's also maintained the dynamic range better on the Pixel compared to the iPhone 8 Plus. Some of those whites are a tad blown out on the iPhone 8 Plus here, but on the Pixel, they have been maintained very well. Now, moving on to an outdoor wide shot, both doing absolutely great here. Slightly warmer on the iPhone, slightly cooler on the Pixel, but I think in terms of dynamic range, they're about the same, I would say. And moving on to another outdoor wide shot, both doing great here once again. And in this image, the dynamic range is about the same, I would say. If you look at the Pixel, the clouds where the spaceman is, those have been slightly better maintained on the Pixel, but the foreground is brighter on the iPhone 8 Plus. So it looks like the iPhone 8 Plus has favored the foreground a little bit more, whereas the Pixel has balanced your shot. Now, an advantage that you do have on the iPhone 8 Plus is the 2x optical zoom, and this is quite a useful feature. It's something that's not available on the Pixel. Now, another shot with some very tricky dynamic range, and in this case, I actually think that the iPhone is doing better. If you look towards the clouds where the sun is, that area has been washed out a little bit on the Pixel, whereas it's been a little bit better maintained on the iPhone 8 Plus. Slightly more vibrant colors here on the iPhone 8 Plus as well. This is going to come down to your personal preference. Now let's move on to the portrait modes. I know this is something that you guys really want to see. Now, first things first, because you don't have a dual camera sensor on the Pixel, the focal length is slightly different. So what I had to do is I had to actually move back slightly for the iPhone picture, and you can notice that difference in the background. And that is to get a similar shot as possible. But in terms of the actual end result, both doing absolutely great here. I would call this one a draw. Now, moving on to another shot. This is with a person, and this is most likely what you're going to be using the portrait mode for. And here, the Pixel has much better colors and much better dynamic range. You can see that the iPhone 8 Plus has washed the image slightly because of the direct sunlight. But when we do go in 100%, the iPhone 8 Plus actually looks like it's done a better job on the edges. If you look towards my ear on the Pixel and also a bit towards my hair, you can see that it has been blurred in slightly. Now, I think this is thanks to the dual camera setup on the iPhone 8 Plus, which is better sensing that depth. Now, trying out another portrait shot, this time with an even more complex background to see how well these do. Once again, the colors seem to be better maintained on the Pixel and you've got better dynamic range. If you look towards my forehead, the iPhone 8 Plus has blown out the highlights there slightly, whereas these are maintained on the Pixel. Now, going in 100%, neither of these are perfect in terms of the edges. You can see towards the tricky areas such as those windows in the house in the background near my shoulders. Both have struggled a little bit, but the Pixel does have a few more defects in the background compared to the iPhone 8 Plus. Once again, I do think this comes down to the dual lens versus the single lens. Now, moving on to low light indoors, the Pixel doing a better job here in my opinion. It's much brighter, the images. Both images are quite sharp, however. And then moving the test outdoors in low light, I do think that the Pixel once again is doing better here. Colors better maintained and you've got more detail. It's a sharper image on the Pixel. And if you do look towards the entrance of the Space Center, towards the bottom, you can see that the colors and detail have been much better maintained on the Pixel compared to the iPhone 8 Plus. Now, trying out another test outdoors in low light, both doing pretty good, I think. But when we do go in 100%, I think the Pixel is not as sharp as the iPhone 8 Plus. If we look towards the text, it does seem to be a tad sharper on the iPhone 8 Plus in this situation. One more test in low light outdoors. I think both are doing a really good job overall. Going in 100%, the Pixel does seem to have better maintained the colors and the detail on the upper sign where it's National Space Center, but the iPhone 8 Plus seems to have better maintained the text where it says a Millennium Commission Lottery Project. So I would call this shot a bit of a draw overall. So there we have it, guys, the super SAF style camera comparison between the iPhone 8 Plus and the Google Pixel 2 XL. And when it came to the front facing camera images, I think the Pixel 2 XL was the winner overall, with a wider angle as well as much better dynamic range. You also have the portrait mode, which is going to allow you to blur the background. This works really well already in my opinion, but it's only going to improve with software updates. For video from the front facing camera, I think both were good, but the Pixel 2 XL once again I think had a bit more dynamic range. Outdoor images, I think both were good. With the 8 Plus you do have the advantage of that optical zoom. For dynamic range, however, I think it was a bit of a draw, with the close-up going to the Pixel but the wider shot going to the iPhone 8 Plus. I think both do absolutely great for dynamic range from the rear facing camera, but this just may vary slightly from situation to situation. Now for video, both shot amazing quality 4K video. With the 8 Plus you do have 4K at 60 frames a second, however. Now I couldn't actually test this out in this particular video because the final video is being exported out at 4K at 30 frames a second. And with the iPhone 8 Plus you've also got slow motion at 1080p 240 frames a second. On the Pixel you've only got 720p at 240 frames a second. The Pixel, however, was super stable, especially when you're walking. It looks like you're pretty much using a gimbal. This is thanks to the optical as well as electronic image stabilization. Now for the portrait mode, both actually did good in their own ways. The Pixel 2 had better dynamic range and colors, whereas the iPhone 8 Plus did a better overall job in terms of the edges and blurring out the background because of the dual lenses that it has. Now this should hopefully improve with both of these as we get software updates. Another thing that's going to improve with the iPhone is studio lighting. This allows you to switch between different lighting modes after you've taken an image in portrait mode. Some of these work well right now, but others such as stage lighting I do really struggle with at the moment. This should improve with time. For low light, it was close in some situations. I would say that the Pixel 2 XL was better overall. Now for audio, even though both of these have stereo speakers, both of them actually record in mono audio, but the Pixel 2 was louder. That's what I think anyway. What do you guys think? Definitely drop me a comment below. Let me know. If you want to see lots of images from lots of different devices, then definitely give me a follow on Instagram. I'm at SuperSafTV. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, then please do hit that thumbs up button for me. It really does help me out. And if you want to see more super SAF style camera comparisons like this, then make sure you have subscribed and switched on notifications. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on Super Saf TV, and I'll see you next time.